Hi, everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. It is a beautiful day, and I'm thankful that people have joined us for this evening. My name is Robin Tatsuda. I'm the Executive Director at the Arc of Washington. Whoa, I'm not the Executive Director of the Arc of Washington. I'm the Executive Director of the Arc of King County. I'm sorry. And I am excited to be here. I identify as a biracial, cisgendered female. I use she, her pronouns. I'm sitting in my home office wearing headphones with my dark hair that's short, with kind of a bluish sleeveless shirt on that's got white patterns on it. And in fact, I am doing very little today because I have the great pleasure of handing over tonight's event to my colleagues, Zach Sadiq and Marlene Galachan, who are actually going to take the reins and lead this show off. So let me be quiet now, and Zach, take it away.
Right now?
Yeah.
Awesome. Hello, everyone. My name's Zach Sadiq. I am the Disability Systems Navigation Coordinator over at the Arc of King County. I use he, him pronouns, and for a visual description, I'm a 30-year-old white dude with an apocalyptically large beard and wearing gaming headphones. I'm just so glad that all of you are here with us today. I got a lot more to say there, but I think Marlene will probably want to introduce herself now as well. So hello, Marlene.
Hello, thank you for having me today. I'm sorry if it's a little bit dark, but I had to turn off the lights that were blinding me. So that's the trade-off, so I can see what I'm reading. My name is Marlene Galachan, and I work at the Alliance of People with Disabilities. I'm an independent living specialist. My pronouns are she, her. I am a white female with blonde hair, and I wear glasses. I have on a like a burgundy colored shirt with some flowers on it and a gray hoodie sweater. I'm in my office in Seattle, and there's a big bright orange wall behind me and a couple of plants that I have managed to not kill. I'm going to read off some housekeeping instructions. So captions are available in Zoom. Click Show Subtitle in your Zoom menu bar to turn them on. Captions are also running at streamtext.net. That URL is too long to read, but we'll paste it into the chat. StreamText allows you to enlarge the font and change the color and contrast of the captioning. There's also a chat feature on StreamText, so you're welcome to submit questions or comments, and there we will monitor them and voice any questions during the Q&A break. Asl Interpreters are available today. We are presenting in gallery view, so the interpreters should always be visible. You do not need to pin them. Please know that we have 2 interpreters, so if you pin the current interpreter, it could prevent you from seeing the active interpreter after an interpreter change. You do not need to be on Zoom to access this event. We will read all questions out loud and voice any images on the screen so that the content will be available to individuals calling in on the phone or who cannot see visual content. This event is being recorded. We will answer any questions periodically throughout the discussion. Please use the Q&A tab for any questions you have for the panelists. Please use the chat tab for a general conversation and comments. Cart, chat, stream text can be used for both questions and comments. We will use both person with disability and disabled person interchangeably, recognizing different people's preferences for first person or identity first language. Thank you. I'll hand it over to Zach now.
Yeah, so again, thank you all so much for being here. We really appreciate it. This is the 6th session of our Understanding Ableism monthly series. These events have been hosted by King County Disability Consortium, which is composed of about 40 disability serving organizations and individual disability advocates and activists. These Understanding Ableism events are led by the disability community, and the intention is to promote disability justice within the King County enterprise. In this 6th edition of our series, we'll be discussing employment discrimination, both in the lived experience context, as well as reflections on the systemic and institutional barriers that exist for both finding jobs and staying employed in those meaningful jobs. And I'm sure many of you know this, but the employment statistics for people with disabilities are very alarming. According to the US Bureau of Labor, 17.9% of people with disabilities are currently employed, employed in 2020, and this was down from 19.3% in 2019. To give a comparison to that, non-disabled people had an employment rate of about 61.8% in 2020 and 66.3% in 2019. And it's also super important to consider the intersection of race and disability. And we do know from the statistics that Black, Latin, and Asian people with disabilities are much more likely to be unemployed compared to white people with disabilities. And one community that is especially impacted is the Native community. It's very important to consider the historical context and how settler colonialism, genocide, and cultural erasure create disabling conditions for Native communities. In fact, this webinar is being broadcasted from lands that were the coastal lands inhabited by the coastal Salish people, where they historically lived until they were forced to relocate to reservations by the Treaty of Point Elliott. Unfortunately, the Native communities are still with us today. It's also clear that there's a long way to go in ending the unemployment crisis that the disabled community experiences, as well as ending the legacy of harm and oppression that, you know, has also been perpetuated on so many other marginalized communities. And it's our hope that this panel can help, you know, go some way to motivating and creating change. And now Marlene will explain the focus of the panel in detail.
Thank you, Zach. So today we're going to hear from a panel of people, 3 people, I believe, with disabilities who are willing to share their personal experience with disability justice issues in the world of work. I believe employment should be an option for any person interested in working, regardless of label, support need, or perceived functioning level. However, this is not a reality for most people with a disability. No one should have to mask who they are to obtain or maintain a job, but this is a reality for many people with a disability. This panel discussion will help us gain insight into how employers, coworkers, friends, family, and community members can address issues of accessibility and equity for disabled people who want to work, and learn that making reasonable adjustments to policies, procedures, and practices in areas of employment are a workable solution to creating a more equitable and accessible workplace. Lastly, let us better understand the benefits of employment to an individual's overall health and quality of life. So each panelist will introduce themselves, share their name, their pronouns, their visual description, and their brief connection to this topic. And then I'm going to ask the first question, and you can go ahead and answer the question. We'll be going in order. So first would be Dorian, second is Kyle, and third is Erica. And then we'll just go back to the same order so that you can kind of predict when your turn is up next. Okay, so is Dorian ready to introduce yourself?
Yes, hi, my name is Dorian Taylor. My visual description, my pronouns are they, them, or he, him. My visual description, I'm a young-looking 41-year-old, light-skinned, black transmasculine person. I have headphones on. I'm in a vehicle right now. I've got on a black hoodie, and I've got on like turtles, like aviator glasses, and a black hat. And my connection to this topic, I have multiple disabilities. I'm autistic and I am a wheelchair user. And I've faced several barriers to employment and have been pushed out of employment and even had to create my own business to get employment. So that's a little.
Okay. Thank you for the introduction. So our first question for you is, what does accessible and equitable employment mean to you?
Great, that's a great question. Accessible and equitable employment. Well, as mentioned before, like employment is for accessible. That's can be a double-edged sword, and I'm going to say that because as a visibly physically disabled person, when I go to work, that is the main focus, is making sure the office is physically accessible, and oftentimes the cognitive aspect is left behind. So I'm losing my words. Accommodations. That's it. The accommodations that I need. I've been told that I'm asking for too much. What that means is that an equitable workplace means that I can shine and give to the employer everything that I'm able to provide with the right tools. And that's basically it, that I can be myself and I can use all the tools and all the skills that I have and utilize them in all the ways possible for the employer, and not have to feel like I'm begging for that or being too much, or having to not do as well at my job as I could because I'm not getting the accommodations.
Thank you. Yes, you should not have to do that. Next is Kyle. Kyle, what does accessible and equitable employment mean to you?
Hello, everybody. My name is Kyle Kajorian. I work at the Arc of King County with my colleagues, Robin and Zach. I use he, him pronouns. My visual description is I'm an olive skin guy. We got a big nose, ear piercings, and some facial hair. And my connection to this topic is I'm a disabled person. I have both visible and invisible disabilities, and I have experienced ableism in the workplace. Accessible and equitable employment. That to me is a standard that we can all strive for. It's supposed to mean that anyone, regardless of ability level and any intersection of any marginalized community, should be able to obtain and maintain employment. But unfortunately, as I'm sure that everyone on this call knows, that is not the case for a lot of people with disabilities. And I would be remiss if I didn't point out the fact that people with disabilities are allowed to be paid a sub-minimum wage by the ironically named Fair Labor Standards Act all the way back in 1938. Now, a handful of states have outlawed the practice of paying folks with disabilities a sub-minimum wage, Washington included. However, it is still prevalent in the majority of the United States. So when I think of accessible and equitable employment, I think of a world that, or a country where that is not the case.
Thank you. Erica, you're up next. Could you give us, introduce yourself and give us a brief description, and then I'll ask you the question.
Okay. Hi, my name is Erica. I am a 31-year-old white female. I go by she, her. Basic description of my looks would be, I'm a little on the chunkier side. I have blonde hair that's in an updo, but covered by, I'm wearing a hoodie right now. So actually my hood is up. It's a bright blue hoodie. And then in the background, there's like, I'm in my apartment, there's Christmas lights and a bunch of junk in the background. Let's see. So my disability is invisible. I have primarily, I have generalized anxiety disorder, CPSD. I'm a trauma survivor. Those are the big ones. So I won't go any further than that. And let's see. Yeah, that's about it for the description.
Okay, so what does accessible and equitable employment mean to you?
Accessible and equitable employment, primarily for me, it probably would just mean like the basic concept that everyone, regardless of their abilities, should have access to the same employment based on, you know, skill and experience, not on anything else than that. So there should be no distinction of whether or not somebody gets hired or the way somebody is treated in the workplace based on whether or not they have, or if they're differently abled. And let's see. For me personally, I want to be able to feel like I have an actual shot of being hired. That has not been the case in my lifetime. I get very bad, like debilitating anxiety, especially when I am under pressure or when I'm speaking to new people. It can be very paralyzing. And particularly when you're applying for jobs, they have this cookie cutter kind of like, you know, they want like somebody who's bubbly, somebody who comes really prepared. Unfortunately for me, like I do prepare for these kinds of things, and it comes across, because of my disability, it comes across as if I did not prepare, and that does not look good. So I think just like the basic concept of like employers being maybe just like better educated on like what various disabilities like might look like, and just not basing, not putting so much weight, I guess I should say, like into kind of like people's presentation, for instance, like the way that you present yourself, because at the end of the day, it's like that's a pretty it doesn't really have like much to do with like your ability to do the job, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
That makes sense.
Yeah. I also think there should be more employment opportunities that involve either flexible work schedules, like depending on what the person's needs are, maybe they need to be working part-time, or they need to work certain hours of the day, maybe in the morning or at nighttime, the weekends, the weekdays. I found from my experience, like, for instance, if I work too many hours, it negatively affects my mental health. And I cannot function at work when I don't take care of my mental health, basically. So anyways, I'm rambling.
That's okay.
That's probably good enough. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, I think Zach is up.
I am, and we now have a second question we're going to go to. And I just wanted to thank the panelists for the amazing answers already. Our next question is, how can employment be more accessible to you? And what's worked and what needs improvement? Dorian, you'll be up first.
So say that again, how can employment be more, just repeating?
Dorian, it sounds like we're getting a packet loss from your connection, so it was pretty garbled. Were you asking a clarifying question about the question?
Yeah, I turned my camera off to see if that works a little better. I apologize for not being at home right now. Yeah, I asked if you could repeat the question one more time,
Sure.
just for clarification.
Totally. The question is, how can employment be more accessible to you? What has worked for you, and what needs improvement?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because in all honesty, I'm still looking for what works for me in employment. I've had my own, equity project management and consulting business and for some time. And my last place of part-time employment, I worked until March, and I had for 2 years, and that was the first job I had outside of my own business in like 12 years. And I faced, unfortunately, I dealt with like extreme levels of discrimination at that job. My employer would constantly shift my job description and my hours without telling me or asking me what I needed. And one of the things that I need is consistency. It's hard for me to, one thing about having my own business is that's extremely stressful for me. Part of why I miss the time is when I don't do things at the same time every day, it can be difficult for me. I know that jobs that I've worked really well in the past, before my physical disability, I worked routines, and even though I'm good at spur on the spot things, and I do like things to change, I like some sort of routine. So having someone who misunderstood my abilities and made decisions for me and constantly changing things without asking me didn't give me that type of consistency. And unfortunately, it didn't work out. I worked there for some years, but that was one of the main reasons it didn't work out. I'm in the process. I just finished school, and I'm in the process of looking for full-time employment. And one of the things I'm looking for is a consistent schedule, because I think with full-time employment, I think it's something I'll be able to do, but I also think that the employer would feel less inclined to snatch my job description out from underneath me and switch it. It's also why I don't want to work for nonprofits anymore, I need something a little more metaphorically set in stone. So, yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Dorian. And as an autistic person myself, I can definitely relate to the need for consistency. It's so important. And then when you have managers pulling shenanigans, like sounds like the ones you had were, it's definitely really stressful. So sorry to hear you had to go through that. So Kyle, what about you?
I don't know if I can follow it up because everything that I would say I need about myself, Dorian so eloquently put. I am not autistic, but I do have a lot of I do have invisible sensory disabilities, and it's too deep to get into here. But I also, because of those things, really like consistency. But I think what works for me more than anything else that I've had thus far in my professional life is a manager or supervisor asking, what can I do to best support you? Is it's not the only thing I need, but my goodness, it goes a long way. And it's the fact that I've only ever heard it like 2 or 3 times in my professional life is, it's not okay. So that's what works like best for me, is working with people who are willing to work with you. What doesn't work though is assuming that your employer, even like I've worked at disability orgs before, and a lot of a trap that a lot of them fall into is that they think they know what you need based on the disability that you may have disclosed. And a lot of the time that's just not the case. I can tell you, for me, my disability is very like part of a spectrum, and the sort of what you think of when you hear the phrase that is my diagnosis is not what I have. So I would say people make assumptions is something that hasn't worked, and asking if I need support and then asking me what that is sort of my golden ticket for workplace accessibility.
Awesome. Thank you, Kyle. That was a great answer. And Erica, what about you?
So let's see. I guess one of the most important things that would help me feel like employment was more accessible, a big one for me is probably the ability to also sort of like be able, having a space where it's okay to talk about my disability, as well as asking for my needs related to my disability. As I'm sure you all know, that is not the case that you feel like you can talk about your disability, basically. There's a lot of fear behind it for me about disclosing the fact that I have the disability. Like either during in the interview process, I certainly wouldn't do in the interview process, but it'd be nice if we could. But yeah, like, I mean, in my work environments, it's something that I feel like I have to hide. I feel like I have to put a mask on. And contrary to like how bad I am at public speaking, like right now, like when I'm at work, like I actually am like pretty good at that. I'm pretty good at like having that mask and like appearing to be kind of like normal. But it kind of like eats me away inside it. And oftentimes what that ends up doing to me is that I end up not getting my needs met because I just simply feel like I can't ask for them. There have been times when I've worked in like mental health kind of environments where it was like people were a little more open-minded to it. And I actually did ask for my needs to get met. Like one of the big ones for me is feeling like I can take a break, even if it's like a 5-minute break, just like going outside, getting some fresh air, getting away from sort of like my job for a couple minutes. And yeah, in my mind, I guess it wasn't, in my mind, it wasn't asking for much. You know, and ultimately it helps me to be like a more productive employee as well. And, you know, at one of my jobs a couple of years ago, I did run into an issue where I asked for my needs to get met in this department. I also was asking for, I had a supervisor at the time who was really micromanaging and also borderline like harassed me and would kind of like follow me around and did a lot of like really like weird things. And it caused me to have a lot of like PTSD flare-ups where I became like really fearful and afraid to like see him, to come to work. It caused a lot of problems for me. So you know, telling upper management that and them not doing anything about it, them not acting on it, that's very problematic. And this is coming from a place that actually deals with like mental health and addiction. So if they're not very on top of this, then obviously it's like, it's not very universal at this point, right? And I also think that for like interviews, maybe they could give you the option to like not have a full panel of people. Like if it was just more of like sort of a one-on-one. I personally do a lot better with like kind of casual interviews where they don't make you feel like you're on the you know, like you're I don't know, going to trial or something. And I guess the last big one for me would be like educating the employers and the employers being responsible for educating the staff, you know, maybe like a training or something of what ableism is, just so that like the employees and the management and everybody's kind of on the same page of like what that looks like and like how to deal with it. Cause I don't think that many people do. Thanks.
Thank you for those, that great answer. And yeah, definitely hear some shared themes in all of your answers. A lot of it seems to come down to how willing the employers are to actually, you know, provide those, the accommodations you all ask for. And so, yeah, definitely sounds like there's a bit of a systemic problem there. So thanks for sharing all that. Marlene will now cover the next question.
Thank you. The next question is, what accommodations have you needed the most and have you been able to get them? And Dorian, you're up.
Yeah, the accommodations that I've needed the most tend to be when we are doing, you know, staff meetings and information is being shared. I need it shared both visually and written. It helps, and so Zoom can be hard if I'm not given copies of the PDF, and I'm just I've also and those accommodations have worked for me. Sometimes I do need a little extra breaks because of you know, bladder issues and you know, things that come with having a spinal cord injury. I you know, the standard like 15 minutes, 30 minutes or whatever isn't necessary. You know, it's not that doesn't always work for me. And so those have been the two accommodations that I've needed the most in the type of work that I do that have been the most helpful.
Thank you. Have you been able to get those accommodations?
So that's, yeah. Well, my last employer before the pandemic, the bathroom wasn't accessible. So I used to have to go into this mechanic shop to use the bathroom. So I did get that accommodation, but I didn't get a lot of the written accommodations and things that I need, and it was a struggle.
I'm sorry to hear that. That sounds like it's a simple thing to do for to provide those things. So I'm sorry you didn't get that. Who's next? Kyle.
Hello. So the accommodations that I need most are remote work possibility and flexible work schedule possibility. I think you all know the answer about whether or not I was able to get that. And I'd like to point out something here, though. These are things that a lot of people in the disability world were asking for. I can tell you that with my specific disability, it's like the top thing because chronic pain is a symptom that people with my disability, myself included, experience pretty regularly. And so being able to do your job from your home is invaluable. It is the single most valuable accommodation you can give somebody like me. This is something that I've had to practically beg employers for, disability org or not. And yet, here we are a year into this pandemic and we're all working from home. I know it took a pandemic, but isn't it funny how when it affects people who don't have disabilities too, how quickly things suddenly become accessible to everybody? It's a shame that it had to take a pandemic to get here, but I do hope that when the world returns to a more semblance of whatever normal is, that this is one of those things that we keep doing.
Oh, thank you, Kyle. That is such a good point that you make. I hope that many other people have come to that realization as well. So Erica, you're up next. What accommodations have you needed the most and have you been able to get them?
Yeah, well, as I mentioned in my in the last question, so I don't really need to go over this. The as needed breaks have been a big one for me. It really helps me with like not getting panic on during my shifts. Like just knowing that I have the option to do this. Oftentimes I don't even need to do it, right? And I also agree with the flexible work schedule. That would be a really important one for me. I try as hard as humanly possible to not have my mental health affect my ability to work. But unfortunately, that's not always how it works, right? Like sometimes things happen. Sometimes you have like a really bad day or a really bad week. So just I feel like if there was the open conversation that you could have with your employer, the transparency that you could have about your disability, that as like a starting point. And then of course, following that, like being able to have flexibility with, you know, taking a day off if you really need to, for instance, if you just need like a mental health day. And flexibility with working from home. I also agree with that. Like sometimes it's not possible. Like sometimes you have a job where you have to be there. Right now, like my current employment is that way where like I have to be there. My job is to help people that are in a specific place. I can't just like work from home. But you know, I think that a lot of people are doing jobs where they can work from home. And I think in those cases, I think absolutely they should be able to, or some kind of compromise with their employer on that. Let's see. For me, I do a lot better with limited, you know, face-to-face interactions with my direct supervisor. I completely do not like for me being micromanaged is not really a great option. So I think what's better for me is to have written communication for the most part, very limited FaceTime. I don't feel like I need somebody to babysit me. And oftentimes to me, it comes across as like very aggressive or very like threatening almost. So I never have a very good reaction to it. Let's see.
Were you able to get those accommodations that you needed?
Well, I have an example of a place that I worked at not too long ago where I did actually ask. I asked upper management if they would tell my direct, or if they would have my direct supervisor not helicopter around me. And I also want to mention that he was only doing this to me at the time. He wasn't doing this to other employees. Like it was a me thing. Like, so that added fuel to the fire. And anyways, I asked upper management if they would help me with this issue, and if they would ask him to not do that. And they sort of made like a promise to me, or some kind of promise to me to like not, or sorry, to it was supposed to be followed through with, and essentially it wasn't. This guy like kept doing the same behavior over and over and over until the time that I left that I ended up leaving that job. So there needs to be more enforcement, I think, with like not letting those kinds of things slide, and not brushing it off like the person asking for the accommodation is being like difficult, or that they're asking for too much. Because like everyone has a different way that they work the most successfully, and a lot of people, myself included, like do not need to be micromanaged, especially because like with my disability, it actually triggers like a lot of bad mental stuff for me. And it really contributes to like the decline of my mental health, and therefore my ability to work. So yeah, that was a big one for me. I'm probably out of my 3 minutes, so I'll just stop there. Thanks.
Thank you. I just wanted to add that yes, I was actually working with Erica during that time. And I think one of the things that could be improved upon is that the process for following through with an accommodation. Accommodations don't always mean something material. It can sometimes mean the supervisory style. And when that communication is made from the upper management to the supervisor, how do they make sure the supervisor follows through with that accommodation? Does the supervisor know why they're doing that accommodation? Do they understand what the rights are for people with disabilities in the workplace? So that can probably help the situation when it comes to accommodating people. Zach is up next for question number 4.
Indeed, thank you. So the next question, which we've kind of been starting to go into a little, is what have you experienced within the systems and processes of obtaining and maintaining a job that were discriminatory and ableist? And Dorian, are you, okay, cool, you are ready, awesome.
Yeah, so pardon the train. So what I've noticed as far as discriminatory so in my recent job search, there was a request that you had to be able to move a table without wheels or assistance for this job. And I didn't understand what that means, because I can do that, but I can't walk upstairs, I can lift a table depending on the shape of it. I can move it on my lap. I didn't understand what that had to do with the job. I knew that part of it was like setting up clinics. I decided to interview for the job anyway, and I asked that question. And they didn't have an answer as to why that was there, other than to rule people out, because there was never a situation where you weren't going to have assistance. But there's a lot of people that wouldn't have asked that question. So that's one of the biggest barriers, honestly, that I've noticed. I have gotten hired at a job and they didn't tell me that the place that I had to do my orientation at was upstairs, you know. And so outside of the cognitive barriers that I have, like obtaining employment, being physically disabled, it is hard because you, like as someone mentioned, they don't like disclosing their disabilities. I have to. So and I it it shifts. You can see it shift sometimes when I work with people, the attitudes and whether or not I have a strong running for the job.
Yeah, it definitely seems like, the perception people have of folks, with physical disabilities can be a barrier to, like getting jobs. And like, whenever I've disclosed I'm autistic in job interviews, like I can definitely tell when it has a negative impact. So it's just like, oh, it shouldn't have to be this way, right? Yeah, awesome. Thank you. So what about you, Kyle?
I'm so happy this question is on this list because I get to tell this story. So whoever came up with these questions, thank you. So I once worked for a big organization that was specific to my disability. I will not name them, although boy, do I want to. One of the comorbid things with my disability is that some of us are dyslexic. I am mildly dyslexic. And as such, I would use an extension in my browser to make the text go from red to blue. I don't know how it works, but for some reason it made it easier for me to read. And my boss was a very meticulous man. He would like screenshots of everything I did, and I would send him screenshots. And he would ask me pointedly to turn that off. It doesn't look right. And at first, I kind of thought he was kidding, or maybe he didn't realize that it was an accessibility thing specific to the disability, which is in the organization's name that I have. But he insisted that I turn it off. And I should have quit that day. But that was the first time that, I always knew ableism existed in workplaces for people who are more visibly disabled than I am. But I, for the most part in my life, pass. And that's a whole other discussion as non-disabled looking. But that was the first time that it was ever like directed at me point blank. Like I could have had a target on my chest, and I hated it. And I think back to that, and I still hate it. But other things too, like Dorian said in their answer, they said that the requirements to lift stuff, especially at a job where there will be no lifting. That's only there, as far as I'm concerned, to weed out applicants with people with disabilities. If you are somewhere that's not accessible by public transit, that goes beyond disability, but that also on some level makes your job inaccessible. If your website is non-screen reader friendly, I can go on about this stuff all day, but I just really wanted to tell that story for my answer to this question. So thank you.
Thanks for telling that story, and I'm so sorry you had to experience that story. In order to tell it, it definitely does not sound like a environment where you were very well supported.
No, but it was worth it. It was worth it to tell, for sure.
Oh, well, then that's good, I guess. Cool. All right. Erica, what about you?
I guess I'll start with like, oh yeah, good. Okay. I guess I'll start with, let's see. When it comes to applying for jobs, I pretty much go into the interviews, if I even bother to do, like oftentimes I won't even bother to do an interview because I just assume that I'm not going to be able to pass their arbitrary tests. But I do go into interviews never knowing if they're going to be discriminating against me or not, based on just my mannerisms or my whatever brain farts and getting nervous and whatever it is. Unfortunately, I can't disclose like in an interview the fact that I have like invisible disabilities. It's not really like something that employers like very much. So yeah, as we've talked about, like I usually try to like keep that under wraps, but then of course it makes it very difficult to actually get the jobs. When I have been in the workplace, like one example that I wanted to give was asking for an accommodation regarding a supervisor, that the same one that I mentioned in the last question, needing accommodations regarding kind of related to like him harassing me. And they held a meeting with him in the meeting in order to get these accommodations, which actually caused me like way more stress and anxiety. And then after all of that was said and done, I didn't even get the accommodations. So that's pretty problematic. Like in this example, I actually viewed this guy as like a legitimate threat. Like I felt very unsafe around this guy. And the more space from him would have been the better in my case. So the upper management really they really just, I hate to say it, they kind of failed in that one. And then let's see, I also have had experience with like not really getting like much support from coworkers for various accommodations, so I can like meet my needs during work. One thing that I've got a lot from people is that I need to smile more, that I need to dress a certain way, that I need to speak a certain way. Like a lot of commentary on the way that I look and the way that I present myself. Really, people shouldn't be doing that to anybody. It's like pretty inappropriate in my opinion. But no matter if you have a disability or no disability, that's just not something that you should do. Although I have to say, like, when I have people in the workplace that do comment on the way that I look or the way that I act, it's like very, triggering. It's very triggering for me. And it causes a lot of problems. So, let's see. Yeah, I would say for sure the number one is, people wanting me to be like a certain way at work, people wanting me to like look a certain way. And it kind of comes across to me as like bullying. And I've had that from not just coworkers, I've had that from supervisors, I've had that from like management. So I don't know, it's just a problem. And to me, it feels like harassment. So thanks.
Yeah, thank you for answering that. I think what your answer really brought to mind is just like the sheer amount of sort of like stress and exhaustion that comes from, requesting accommodations, trying to get your needs met. It's something that, folks don't often realize is a thing. And like all of that is just on top of like working, working at your job. So you have the work you're supposed to do, and then you sort of like have the extra work of like managing and trying to get your accommodations because you have a disability. So it can feel like a lose-lose situation at times, especially when, it sounds like there's stigma involved, like at many of the previous employers you all have disclosed. So thank you all for sharing that. Marlene, I don't know if you wanted to briefly share any of your personal experiences with this question.
Turn on my mic. Yes, so I just think that even as a person with disabilities, I was previously unaware of what accommodations you could ask for, what accommodations you might need. And it wasn't until I started really looking into it and seeing all of these different ideas and options for how I can do my job better, or how I can help others do their job better by by supporting them with their accommodation requests. And there's a lot that can be done. And so I think that if people were aware, I just think that there's no education out there for employers to understand what the laws are, what the rules are, what the process is for them. You know, for instance, in Erica's situation, with the accommodation request, that supervisor should not even have to know why they have to supervise her differently. She should not have to explain that to him. He should just be told by his supervisor, his boss, what he is asked to do, and then just do it. And it wasn't that way. And I have a feeling it's probably the same in many situations. So that would be a big one for me, is to require that employers are educated on the processes of accommodation requests. And I think we're off to the next question now. So we're on question number 5, and this one is for Dorian. And the question is, what impact does being employed have on your life? And what would your life be like if you couldn't obtain a job that's accessible and equitable? Go ahead, Dorian.
So, sorry about that. Do you mind repeating one more time?
No problem. What impact does being employed have on your life? And what would your life be like if you couldn't obtain a job that's accessible and equitable?
Yeah, that's a good question. And like, I have experience with that, especially I've always had my cognitive disabilities, but I didn't have as hard of a time. Well, I had a harder time keeping a job when I was younger, not so much getting a job. And being able to work, like, because I believe so much in disability justice, I've now separated my identity from work. Because not being able to maintain a job when I was younger, things have shifted. In the late 90s and early 2000s, I was just a bum for not being able to hold down a job. The fact that I had disabilities wasn't even taken into consideration, and it really made me feel less than. And when I was unable to maintain employment and eventually had to get on Social Security, it shifted even my social circles. So I got involved in a community where I learned that my worth was more than what I do. And as much as employment is important, I think that's also important. And now, employment allows me to be creative, because I did have to create my own employment to even get the job that I was pushed out of. And but it also, quite frankly, I can't afford to live without employment. I don't have family support. I was homeless. And you can't live on Social Security in this area. There's not enough support. And without employment, I can literally die on the streets. It's that there's no sugarcoating it.
Thank you. I've experienced homelessness myself, and I remember that feeling of that, why can't you just get a job? And even my therapist telling me, could you work? right now, and she automatically assumed that I couldn't because of my disability. And that was my mental health therapist. So it's not about whether, you know, you can or can't, it's do you want to? And how can we make it possible for you? That's kind of what means the most to me. Okay, so next is Kyle. And the question for you, Kyle, is what impact does being employed have on your life? And what would your life be like if you couldn't obtain a job that's accessible and equitable?
I would not be able to live the life that I live were it not for my employment. The answer to this question is pretty point blank. Like there is no what my life is not the same without it. I would at best have to move back in with my family. At worst, I'd have to struggle a lot. If I couldn't obtain like, and the effect that it has on my life is I get to, you know, live independently with, you know, my girlfriend in our apartment. I get to have a life. It is unfortunate that we, as Dorian said, equate, you know, value to employment. And I wish we didn't. But it is because of the fact that I have a job that I'm able to live the life that I do. And if I didn't have that, I would be living a very, very drastically different life.
Thank you, Kyle. So the next person up is Erica. What impact does being employed have on your life? And what would your life be like if you couldn't obtain a job that's successful and equitable?
So the basic needs, food, shelter, money for leisure, all the basic needs in life are taken care of when you are employed and are getting income. Then there is the emotional effect that it has on you when you're employed. You have better self-esteem, you have routine, you have social connections. I could probably think of like a bunch more, but you get the drift. I mean, it has a huge impact on your life, whether or not you're employed or not. So if I couldn't obtain a job, my mental health would decline drastically. And I know this. I've struggled to maintain jobs or maintain jobs throughout my adulthood. And then with that comes a lot of feelings of shame, a lot of stigma that I feel from other people. I mean, part of it is internal, like the way that you feel about yourself, but part of it is like society does stigmatize people who are unemployed, especially people who struggle to get employment like consistently. I mean, you know, people throw the word loser on you or whatever, right? And even people that you're close to, like I feel shame even with people like family members, partners, things like that. So that's like a big one. And then of course, when you feel bad about yourself, like it makes it more difficult to get a job, right? So it's a vicious cycle there. And I also just wanted to say really quick that I really liked Marlene's commentary about how it shouldn't be about whether or not you can do a job. It should be about if you desire to get a job and how, like, the ways in which you can get there, basically. Because I do actually feel like in my own personal life, like I've had people that literally think that I'm too messed up to get a job, that I'm just too screwed up, basically. And that's a really unfortunate, it's a really unfortunate yet common way that I think people perceive people like me who have like mental struggles. And it does feel really like limiting, you know, because at the end of the day, like I am just as capable as other people. I just have some things that I might need to tweak in the, you know, when I'm working. When people with disabilities are working, it's like they're very capable people, just like anybody else. They just need accommodations. Not all people are going to have a cookie cutter way that they work the most efficiently, you know. It's just the way it goes. Like, people are different, people have different needs. So yeah, that's it. Thanks.
Thank you, Erica. Yes, it is very, very important to our health and wellness to have opportunities to enrich our lives with different experiences. Sometimes it's work. Employment doesn't have to be full-time, part-time. People should be able to find a job that can fit their needs. And right now it's kind of, I remember when I was looking for jobs, and it's like, I don't think I can work full-time, but part-time doesn't pay the bills. So there was nothing in between there for me. I'm not sure. I think we have Q&A. Do we have Q&A, Zach? Okay.
Yeah, so thank you to those who have been sending in questions. If you all have more questions you want to ask, please either, actually, yeah, please use the Q&A option, which is right next to the chat box, and we will filter through the questions and ask them. And any questions we can't share tonight, we'll share with the panelists by email, you know, for an optional response. And then we'll share those answers with the recording when we send it out. Robin and Kimberly, are the two of you gonna filter through the questions?
This is Robin. There aren't any questions yet in the stream text chat, but I believe Kimberly is tracking the Q&A, and there are definitely questions there. So Kimberly, do you want to go?
Sure, I'd love to. My name is Kimberly Meck. I am the Executive Director of the Alliance of People with Disabilities. I use she, her pronouns. I am a white female with long hair that's tied up behind me. I'm wearing a floral sleeveless shirt, and behind me you can probably see my ceiling fan. We do have a question, Zach, from Melinda. It says, during an interview, do you think it would be helpful to describe the work expectation and environment and then ask the candidate, are there any accommodations you think you may need in order to perform these duties? For clarity on both parties.
Awesome, thank you, Kimberly. Dorian, you wanna take that one first?
So when one of the things that I tell employers that I work with in my equity and consulting business is to ask everybody that what accommodations you need to work better for you, because don't you want that for everybody? And it kind of takes the burden off the disabled person. And I know that's not the standard, but one of the things that I hope to do when I in my business is like helping make that a standard, because everybody needs accommodations. It's not just us. So as an employer, I think one of the things you can do is maybe just take the burden off the disabled person and ask everybody that question.
Awesome, thank you, Dorian. Kyle, what about you?
I just want to say first and foremost, I feel like I've said this a bunch tonight, but I completely agree with Dorian. The only thing that I will add is it's a bit of a double-edged sword, because while I agree that everyone has something that could probably use an accommodation, unfortunately, when employers hear that word, they just go to disability, and all of a sudden, you're no longer a prospective employee. You are a lawsuit waiting to happen. And disclosure is an issue unto itself. So I agree that that is a very useful question to ask, and it should be right up there in your general list of job interview questions that you hear everywhere. But unfortunately, I worry that in so doing, you might be hindering yourself because it forces you to disclose if you answer. Whether or not that's a good thing is a different question, perhaps later today. But, you know.
Yeah, thank you, Kyle. And I was definitely, I'll say I agree with Kyle. I was thinking very similar thoughts there. And I know a lot of folks with disabilities won't necessarily be willing to disclose or answer questions like that because of past discrimination. But yeah, so I agree there. Erica, what about you?
I don't really have anything new to add to this. I agree with Kyle about, like, if it were me, I would be afraid. I would be just afraid to disclose, like, even if it sounded good in theory, you know, like, I think just based on my own personal experience, I think I would be afraid of having it used against me at some later point and being discriminated against.
Yeah, that fear is definitely real. Thank you. Kimberly, looks like we have 2 more questions, you said?
Yes, thanks, Zach. This is Kimberly. We actually have several questions. I guess I do want to give my 2 cents as an employer, though, on that question that was just asked about asking about workplace. I will just say, as an employer, if your job descriptions don't include the expectations of the job or the workplace conditions, please make sure they do, because then it does have an opportunity for any person to decide whether they are able to do the job or not. I have seen questions on the job applications, you know, most general job applications that ask, can you do the job with or without accommodations? And all you have to do is say yes or no. And you have an opportunity to have that conversation if necessary. But again, a very, very clear, thorough job description is essential to allow a person to make that decision independently. The next question we have comes from Samuel. It says, how can a small business use their resources to aid people? Are there financial programs for small businesses that can be put into practice to hire disabled people? And what opportunities are offered for businesses that are owned by disabled people?
Awesome. Thank you, Kimberly. Dorian, do you know of anything?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
Yeah, the question is, how can small businesses use their resources to aid people? Are there financial programs for small businesses that can be put in place to hire disabled people? What opportunities are available for businesses that are owned by disabled people?
I don't know what opportunities there are for businesses I'm not aware of that. I'm sorry.
No worries. Kyle, what about you?
Unfortunately, I am also unaware of that, but it is a very good question.
Yeah. Erica, do you know of anything?
Not offhand. I was honestly trying to rack my brain, but I'm not I'm sure if given enough time, I might be able to think of the first part of that question of, like, how small businesses could help, or sorry, use their resources to help people. But I definitely don't know the second part of that question. Sorry.
Yeah, no worries.
I
So
wanted to chime in really quick. I know that I just don't know if it's for small businesses, but I know that there is a tax break for people that hire people with disabilities. That's all I know about.
So I knew there was something available, and I just Googled it, and it looks like there's something called the Work Opportunity Tax Credit, and
That's yep.
yeah, and it provides a tax credit for employers who hire folks from marginalized communities, or who take referrals from vocational rehabilitative services. So that can be one way. I just linked information to it in the chat, and it also looks like there are tax breaks available as well. So there's some, but I'm not sure if it's enough. Definitely needs to be more.
Zach, this is Kimberly, and yes, the tax credit that is offered is the intention is for businesses to be able to use it to help provide accommodations for the individuals with disabilities. So that's why they offer that tax credit. It helps offset the potential cost for some of that.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you. But good, very good question.
And this is Kimberly again. We have another question from Karen, who asks, how can a job coach or job developer help the most? And for those that are unaware of what a job coach or a job developer is, they are typically an individual who can either work off-site or on-site with an individual with a disability to help assist them to either get hired or learn a job or learn new tasks associated with that job. They can also help an individual to even find employment.
Awesome, thank you. Great question, Karen. Dorian, do you have any thoughts there?
No, because I wouldn't even know. I mean, it's good to know what they do, but I wouldn't even know the first step about going about getting one. So like a job coach doesn't seem accessible to me because I don't know how to get one. If I could afford it, what the accessibility is like, if they would be trying to push me into subpar employment, or if they would push me into employment that I can actually do. So these, it's not something I could answer.
Awesome, thank you. And I definitely, yeah, I can relate to that a little. I know most folks with disabilities wouldn't necessarily qualify for job coaches based on the order of selection process that's in place through the Department of Vocational Rehabilitation right now. But, you know, definitely wish we could have them. Kyle, what about you?
Do I even need to say that I agree with Dorian again? I mean, I feel like I should just preface all my answers with that. I did not know that there was a difference between a job coach and a job recruiter, but now that I know that there is, I echo everything Dorian said, and I'm sorry that I can't give a better answer.
We'll arrange for a shirt to be sent to you that has "I agree with Dorian" on it. That way,
that'd
you don't
be
have
fantastic.
To say anything.
I get his point. Yeah.
Erica, do you have anything you want to add?
Is this, I just wanted to clarify really quick, is this the same thing as like a, because I had, through my health insurance, I had like a job, I don't remember what the terminology was for them, but it's probably really similar though, where it was like a hired person who was like hired to help me get jobs. And I had some issues with the way they went about it. I think, not to oversimplify, but I feel like they could have listened more and not as much pushed their own kind of agenda. I think that getting to know a person more as an individual, sort of putting more time and kind of thought into like what that specific person needs, rather than because from my experience when I was doing this, I didn't really feel like it was being catered at all to like me as an individual. I kind of just felt like I was like a number to her or something. So yeah, just being like a little bit more like individualized maybe, and like listening more to like what they need, and not just getting a bunch of links from Indeed. That was sort of the experience that I had, was like just getting like sent like a bunch of links, like links that I could have just like looked up like kind of on my own. So like, I don't know, maybe just also just consistency. Having a person that's consistent. I've had job coaches that have like just kind of been like flaky, and it kind of makes you lose faith in the system a little bit when the person can't really I don't know, show consistency, that they care enough to show up to appointments and things like that. So that's all I got. Thanks.
I would like to add something. So I've done job developing before, and I've done job coaching before. So to give everyone a little bit of an idea, is what I would do with a client is, if they're looking for a job but they don't know what kind of environment they want to work in, I would actually go with them and visit the environment first before they even applied for the job. So, you know, if they wanted to work at the grocery store, we'd go to the grocery store and just kind of get the feel for the environment to see if that's something that, and look at what the workers are doing, watch the other employees, and to really get with the individual about, you know, through motivational interviewing, you know, like, have you ever been somewhere where you, or have a friend that has a job that you say, I want to do that job? Because sometimes people just want to go for the easiest job or one they think they can get, and it may not be the right fit for them. And then with job developing, you know, we would go to the employer, we would talk to them, say that we work with people with disabilities, and, you know, are you interested in, you know, this is what we have to offer you, their business, you know, and it's going to benefit the business, and tell them how it's going to benefit their business. And then if there wasn't a job description that fit for that person, you can carve out a position. If the employer is willing to work with you, you can actually carve out a job description for that person individually, just for them. And that should be happening more than it is, because it doesn't happen very often. But if we could do that, then I think we'd have a lot more, you know, a lot less unemployment rates with the disability community, for sure.
Definitely. Thank you, Marlene. It looks like we have a few more questions left, Kim.
We do have more questions. I think I'm actually just going to answer this one. It says, how did you identify what accommodations you needed, and what would you suggest to someone who doesn't know what accommodations they need? I can answer the second half, which is, and Zach, if there's a possibility you could put that link for Ask Jan back in the chat, that would be great. But I would recommend that individuals check out the website, Ask Jan. It provides a wealth of information in regards to different types of accommodations that can be done in a workplace. It also is helpful to check with other people who have either your functional limitations, not necessarily your same disability, but if they have the same limitations that you do, to find out what might have worked for them at their workplace. Does anybody else want to jump in on that question? Any of our panelists?
I just want to say that Ask Jan is also great for employers.
Yes, it is. Okay, I'm going to jump to the next question. It says, I wonder, sorry, the questions jumped on me. I wonder about invisible disabilities, about either undisclosed or undiagnosed disabilities. When an employer notices them and would like to provide and give accommodations, what would be a way you recommend they ask and have the employee understand that this is for their support and coming from a good place? Legally, I will tell you that you probably shouldn't just assume that the disability is or what's causing the issue in the workplace is because of a disability. I would also caution you offering an accommodation based on what you think might be a disability. Just, I guess the bottom line I would say is you can discuss with your employee what issues you're seeing to see if the employee does disclose a disability to you. And then you can have a conversation about a workplace accommodations. But to just assume that it's an undisclosed or undiagnosed disability and actually a form of discrimination.
Kimberly, you were actually breaking up a whole bunch in that last
I'm
statement.
sorry about that. Robin, can you sum it up? Because you do that very well.
This is Robin. I think what Kimberly was trying to say, it is a fine line between how much employers should ask, and certainly employers should never assume. The ADA actually says that employees should request accommodations, and there's pros and cons to that. But we've already heard that people often make assumptions that because people have disabilities, they can't do something. And you could also inadvertently offer accommodations that are not what the person wants or what they feel is appropriate for them. And so it really is truly best to let the employee express what it is they need and be open to exploring how to meet those needs. Was that an accurate summary, Kimberly?
Yes, thank you, Robin. And since my audio seems to be breaking up, I'm curious if you might want to cover that last question in the Q&A.
Yep, I can do that. So the last question in the Q&A, it was from somebody anonymous. They said, there are currently some job requirements listed in some of my company's employee roles that are not inclusive. Some I think we can actually support with accommodations, and some that I do not think we can support frowny face. For example, going into people's homes, getting there, staff is expected to drive to and from, and we have no control over the environments that our staff enter. Does anyone have any thoughts or recommendations on this?
Yeah, I guess the first thing that pops to mind, definitely looking at like what actually needs to be considered a requirement for the job. As folks have said earlier in this panel, like a lot of the job descriptions have the boilerplate, like must be able to carry up to like 50 sea lions or something like that, or pounds, stuff of that nature. And for a lot of positions I've had, we don't actually necessarily need to be able to do that. And then also looking at what is actually essential for the specific role you're hiring for, and could someone else do that specific task, and then you could do like a task swap or something like that between different positions. Do any other folks have anything they want to add there?
Well, yeah, that would be like carving out a position for somebody. There's just that one little thing that they need changed, and they'll willing to trade. I'll do all the dishes, I just can't stand doing the cooking. It shouldn't be a big deal.
Awesome, thank you.
Robin, this is Kimberly. I think it's about time that we need to wrap up. We've hit our time. I would definitely like to thank all of our panelists. You have all been amazing, and thank you for being willing to share your stories and your information. And I hope that it has been helpful for our attendees tonight. I would like to tell you that this event was recorded, and once it's posted, you can view the recordings and all other sessions on the King County Disability Consortium webpage. The URL is kingcountydisability.org/webinars, and I posted that in the chat.
And then I'll wrap up. This is Robin again. I'll wrap up by saying we are continuing through the summer. I know a lot of people take breaks, but we are certainly meeting always the third Thursday of the month through 2021. And next month, in July, we're celebrating the 31st anniversary of the Americans with Disabilities Act, or the ADA. And our series is going to focus on hearing lived experiences with the impact of ADA on the lives of people with disabilities. So keep your eye out for information on that, and have a great rest of your evening. Thanks, everyone.
Cart, you can go ahead and end, and Lori, you are free to go. And Dave, is it Dave? Dave, thank you, and thank you for speeding here as quickly as you could.
Yeah, I am really sorry. There were 2 accidents that I get caught up in. I'm so sorry.
You can't help
It's
that.
all right.
It's not
You
your
can't
fault.
help it.
Yeah, welcome to Seattle, right?
Mhm.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you.
Good night.
Night.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
I wish Zach had stayed on.
Oh, yeah. I could see if he can come back real quick to debrief. He might have just been exhausted.
Oh, yeah. Well, I thought it went well.
It did. I thought it went very well.
Yeah, I think that was
Was
great.
there not, how many people were have there typically been attending?
Right around 100.
This one was equivalent, I think, to last month's, pretty close. I'd have to pull up my numbers again.
Yeah, a lot of people register though, and they register to be able to get the link to be able to view it later. I had several emails this afternoon wanting to make sure that we were recording it so that way we could get it out there. You know, the first couple of ones, we didn't actually have the KCDC website up yet. And now we do. And so it's very easy just to tell people to go out to the KCDC website because all the recordings are there.
Yeah.
Oh, are we still being recorded right now?
No. Oh, I don't know. Are we?
Yes.
Yeah, I got
yes,
a notification.
Yes, we are. But I always have them trim this piece off. So don't worry.
Okay.
It's because Zach
It
was going to
makes it
say bad
easier, so-
things.
Well, it doesn't matter.
I know Zach. No.
Well, because when I send it to our IT people to do to post it, I just tell them stop it at this time mark, and they just cut the rest of it off. So.
So for future ones, is it okay to share the invitation to invite?
Oh, hell yes. Send it to everybody.
Okay, I know. I was thinking that, but I forgot to ask and I was so busy, but I will for the next ones. Yeah.
Yeah, send it to everybody. Is that a dress, Robin? If
It
so,
is.
Well, it's still cute, but if I was gonna say if so, that is really cute.
It is. Thanks. I'm sitting here and I realized I haven't been in this room in like a week or more, and none of my plants have been watered, and one of them is feeling it.
Oh no.
That's the catnip, and the cats can't have that happen.
I'm about to move my cat to a new house, which is always fun, right?
Oh, yeah.
Always. I was going to say, did anyone else have like cats just like pulling shenanigans during the webinar? Because mine were just like fighting the table in front of me, and that was fun.
My cats didn't do any shenanigans this time, which is always disappointing. Usually, usually one of them is walking across me and then like showing off their butt. But
my cat's shenanigan was dropping a mouse at the back door. last week.
Yep, we had.
And I didn't see it, so I like shut it in the door a couple of
Ew,
times. So it
ew,
was-
ew. Last week if I could have my way, I would let the cats in and out at their leisure. And my fiance would never let them in and out at their leisure. And one of the flaws of letting them in and out is that, they bring things in.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
in the last couple weeks, we've had 2 live rats in the house.
Mhm.
And then my fiance-
Live.
live. They weren't
Managed
full.
to not even kill him.
They didn't kill him. They brought him in and were like, here, run around the house.
Yeah.
And that was gross. And so now they're locked in for a while. They don't know why, but I'm like, we don't want the hantavirus. All right.
I have 2 stories about that. The first one, when I was younger, I was going to Pierce College, and my mother had a housekeeper because she was working single parent and all that. So I get a panicked phone call from my mother one day telling me I have to come home from class. And I'm in the middle of a college class. And apparently the cat had brought something in and deposited it on the floor in my bedroom. And the housekeeper was refusing
to go
to clean. And it was a dead bird. But, I'm just like, I told my mother, I'm like, what do you expect to do? Go get a Hallmark card? And then the second one was that we had a cat named Radio, and sorry for the sirens, but we had a cat named Radio, sweetest cat in the world, and we started to have a really bad mouse problem, and we discovered that they were coming into the basement, so we shut that off. But so then the mice were still around the house. That cat caught 13 mice in a week.
Wow.
And killed them and put them on our doorstep.
Wow.
I was okay about that because that meant that there was no more mice.
That's
but
a lot of mice.
There's just something to be said about finding the head on one side and the body on the other side of the front porch. So,
I was going to say that cat sounds like a hired assassin or something like that.
That cat caught more than our mouse traps in the basement caught.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Caught something like
cat,
9 in the
brought
basement
a
in mouse
guinea
traps.
pig once.
Oh,
Killed a guinea pig. First of all, I want to know who's missing their guinea.
Right.
Yeah.
So, okay, I have so many stories, but
So many.
I'll hold it off. Maybe I'll just tell 2. Speaking of guinea pigs, we didn't get a guinea pig, but my cat brought in a baby rabbit. And then when my cat brings in things, like she holds on to it if it's actually dead, she won't put it down. She plays with it like it's really sadistic. Like she's out there throwing this baby rabbit around like it's like the best day. So what cracks me up though, so there's this, what I assume, as I've anthropomorphized this world, that the mama rabbit, there's a rabbit that shows up in our yard and sits and stares down Fluffers, my cat that killed the baby. And I always tell Fluffers, I'm like, that's the mama whose baby you killed and she's coming after you. Fluffers sits in the window and cackles at her. And I'm like, you got to watch out. She knows who you are. But there's that's a funny thing. But then, so Fluffers is the one who catches things. The other cats too, like she like doesn't quite catch things. But Fluffers is it's a stone cold killer. That's what we call her. And so the only time she ever growls is when she's got her kill in her mouth, and then she's like. So I want to say it was last summer. Doors are open, cats in and out, and I hear growling, and I'm like, damn it. Like, obviously, there's got to be something. So I go into the room that I hear the growling, and there she is with something in her mouth. It's a baby thing. And I'm like, ugh. And then I pan out and realize that the grown parent thing of the thing she's killed is also killed sitting on the floor next to her. She was like, oh, you brought the whole family. That's nice of you. But don't do that, right? Not okay.
Oh my God.
Yeah. She went back. She's like, oh yeah, got the big one. Now let's get all the little ones and bring them in.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
So Robin, Marlene walked into the office and was like, what the?
I was wondering if you were in your office. I was
told her
in
that
there.
you were responsible for it.
Yep.
Yeah, no, I was like, where'd the big table go?
The one the
Yeah.
one in the reception area.
Yeah, no, the big conference table.
We never had a big conference table. It was all a bunch of little tables pushed together.
Okay. I thought it was like a big oval conference table. I guess I didn't pay close
Individual
attention.
ones scooted together.
Nope.
They
Nope,
move.
We used to have a boardroom table that was twice as long as the one that's in our kitchen in the office right now. And
Oh,
I refused when we had our flood, that one got damaged because it soaked up so much water. And so I just scrapped it and I said, I refuse to buy another one like this because there's no way to move it around.
It's too
And
big.
so there's no way to make accommodations or anything. And to make it for a person with a disability, like in a wheelchair, to raise it up,
Yeah.
you can't do that with this table.
Yeah.
So that's why I've always gone with smaller tables that can be modified for individuals.
yeah, that makes sense.
But
Well, there's
how
a
do
lot
you-
more
how-
room
Zach,
in
how
there.
do you- Oh yeah, there is. So Zach and Marlene, how do you guys think it went?
I think it went pretty well.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think it went
I think it
good.
was great.
Yep.
Your panelist choices were awesome, and
Yeah.
for all the fright that Erica had, she was phenomenal.
Mhm. It was great.
Well, she'll get going and doesn't and can't stop herself. You know, that's what she's afraid of. So she got ahead a couple times, but it was okay.
No, she did it.
Her biggest thing is to get out of her own way. You know.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm glad she did get
Well,
through
you
it
both
okay.
deserve a pat on the back. You guys
Mm-hmm.
both did wonderfully. So thank you so much. And please thank your panelists as well.
Yeah.
And
Well,
and
I
don't
will,
know if
and
you-
thanks for all the hard work you did, Zach, and it, you know, it flowed really good, and I felt like I had all the information I needed, and it was great. I would be happy to do it again sometime.
Yeah, likewise.
Well, we might recruit you to help out. Robin, I talked to Gurmai, Rhonda, Gurmai's chief of staff,
Mhm.
and she is so excited about our idea that we came up with for July.
Nice.
What's the
And
idea?
she's thinking about having the council issue a proclamation.
God, wouldn't it be nice?
Yes.
So the idea is
So
that,
our
yeah, go ahead,
Yeah,
Kimberly.
go
you
ahead.
Oh,
no, go ahead.
well, so our idea, Zach, so, you know, next month, our topic will be related to the ADA. And our idea was to actually have people from the county come back in and talk about their commitment to ensuring people with disabilities are really served by the county. And
Lisa
Gurmai Zahalai has been a really great ally for us, and I feel like we have a really strong relationship with him and his team. And so Kimberly reached out to his team and asked if he would be willing to speak and willing to sort of support our session next month. So details are still being worked out, but you know, we wanted.
Does anyone know Lori Ford?
Who is
No.
she?
She works.
I know her name.
Oh, Lori Ford. She works for the UW, but she works with the ADA.
Yeah,
And then
She works
also,
with CSER, doesn't she?
I thought she worked directly for the UW, but it's out of Mount Lake is where
Sure.
she's. Yeah, it's.
Yeah.
Anyways, her and then Lisa Floyd,
Yeah,
who works for DBHR for King County.
right.
I know that she's the one who does a lot of disability employment stuff, but
Yeah. Well, we're even thinking about the idea of, rather than having an actual panel, is to offer people the opportunity to do a 1-minute recording about what the ADA has meant to them, and then putting it together in a presentation. And Robin, Rhonda thinks that Gurmai wants King County TV to put it on and broadcast it.
Wait, King County has a TV?
The television, yeah,
yeah, they have
where
a
they do
channel.
all of the commission meetings and all
should.
the everything else. They want us, so
They
this
should.
this might get really big, Robin. This might get really,
Yeah.
really big.
Well, and we need to be on it. It's only a month away.
Oh, I know.
Can we get Anita back as well?
And well, that's my next step. To try
Anita,
to
what's her
Chris
last
to
name
see if I can
again?
get in with Anita, because I think that's going to be important. Whitfield.
Yeah, Anita
She's
would.
the head of OESJ.
Yeah.
the Office of
So
Equity and
yeah,
Social
we really
Justice.
need to get on it, but I think that Germay is going to put pressure on the executive side in order to have them issue a joint proclamation, because right now the proclamation could come from the county council, but he's trying to put pressure to have them issue a joint proclamation. So this is really exciting. I wish we would have thought about it sooner, but I think we could I think we could do it.
Yeah. All right, I gotta
All right,
go.
thanks, guys.
Likewise. Take it easy.
Gotta go do
Bye.
dinner.
Great.
Thank
Take
you
care,
all.
everyone.
You guys did
Bye.
fabulous. Have a great
Bye.
night. Bye.
Bye.